have the option of not using your email. Okay. I'll bring that up, my thought up here.
Absolutely. Yes, write it down.
Coming in on horseback.
It should say DS Tech is live. Let me go here. Is Emily watching?
You got us up?
DS Tech.
You got us up?
Just checking.
She's working on it.
We should be, but
Yeah.
you are? Okay, cool,
Yeah.
sweet. Because I like to share it
we're
too
good.
when we get going. But anyway, here we are, Aaron and Dave and Ginny, and we are talking about creating passwords, making them strong and secure and possibly memorable, right? So,
Why are we talking about passwords this month?
because it's password month.
May this
I actually kind of made that up, Aaron. There's actually just one day this month that's called Password Day. So I was like, let's make this password month and we'll talk about passwords all month.
There we go.
Because we can actually talk about passwords all month. I mean, we could talk about it longer. So yeah. All right. So dealing with passwords. I looked up a stat, and according to something called NordPass, I'm assuming that's a password manager of some kind, the average person has 100 passwords. You think that's accurate?
Probably pretty close.
Pretty close. I mean, if you include what's on your phone, what's on your computer, and everywhere else, right? Work and home. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. You can't really keep track of all those passwords. I've seen my son write it down in his little notebook. It's probably not secure since it's right there. I mean, I could hack into any of his stuff if I wanted to.
Yeah, that's the least secure password, one you wrote down on a Post-it note stuck on your monitor, right?
Oh, yeah.
Under your keyboard.
We used to have an employee that did that all the time. He would keep all of his stuff. He had, remember? He was so cute. He had little sticky notes all over his monitor. Anyway, so let's talk about how to create some passwords. The traditional advice, and we're going to go over these 4 points.
This isn't passwords. I still use sticky notes.
Me too.
Well, I do too, but yeah, they're not for passwords. I do. You can use sticky notes on your computer too.
Mm-hmm.
There's a sticky notes app that you can plop all over your screen
Exactly,
if you really wanted to.
Built into Windows, isn't it?
Yeah, and Outlook too. Yeah, you can add sticky notes to your emails. Yeah, that was pretty cool. I think we talked about it on a previous live. Anyway, we're getting off topic. The traditional advice, we're going to go over it, and we're going to talk about, better ways to handle it too. So the traditional advice starts out with you should have 12 characters minimum. What say you?
I had to count this morning, or when I read this. My main password is 18 characters long.
Boy, now I want to count mine.
Yep. With numbers and symbols.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Mine's 17.
Yep.
How about you, Dave?
Mine's on my phone.
I know.
It's also password protected, right? With my thumbprint. Where did I put it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
So minimum 12 is probably good, right? I mean, minimum.
I think so. Yep.
I know some websites say 8 is the minimum, but to be more secure, you're going to want to have them longer. The longer, the better. The longer, the more secure.
Yep.
Okay. The second rule of thumb is to include numbers, symbols, capital letters, and lowercase letters, and use them in a mix. Right?
I had a friend of mine whose policy for passwords, and he always made big, long passwords, but he always put an exclamation point at the very end. And whenever he'd tell you what the password was, he'd say, and bang, at the end. Like, what's a bang? And he told me what it was. So
That's cute. Okay, here's number 3. Make sure it is not, now we disagreed with this one. It is not a dictionary word or a combination of dictionary words. it says stay away from obvious dictionary words or a combination of them. Any word on its own is bad.
Right.
And any combination of a few words is bad, like red house, right? Or how about password?
Right.
That one's super bad, right?
Or your dog's name or your spouse's name.
Well, or your kid's name and his birthday. Something simple like that.
Yeah.
Now, where I disagree on this is I like to think of it as, if the idea is to have multiple passwords across your playing field, what's going to help you remember these things and kind of theme it. So I'll give you just a random example. Is that I grew up watching all the James Bond movies, so I could tell you pretty much the names of them and the stories of them in general. But to take a password like Diamonds Are Forever or Moonraker and use that as your password and add symbols and capitals and a few extra numbers, to me that makes sense because I've seen in those movies Live and Let Die. You could go right down the list, 40 of them plus. But the key is to not repeat them either, is to have
Right.
something every time.
What do you we really haven't touched on this yet before. Something just popped into my head though. What about password hints?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Now you're not supposed to answer them honestly, because people, you could.
They know you.
Yeah, if they know me, they could figure that out, right?
Right.
My mother's maiden name or whatever that is. So you're supposed to answer them untruthfully. And personally, I track those in the notes section of my password tracker, which is a software we're going to talk about next week. We're going to talk about different ways you can track your passwords securely. And that's one of the things. But yeah, you're not supposed to answer them honestly. You're supposed to answer them with something that makes no sense.
Right.
Right?
And words like your mother's maiden name, use your grandmother's maiden name. At least, something you'll remember. That not very many people who want to hack you would think, know your grandmother's maiden name.
Right.
So.
Or use some fictional character's name.
Right.
Or something that just makes no sense.
Yeah. So anyway, we kind of got off subject there.
Yeah, I know, but that's okay. It's valuable information. That's all we want to do is help you guys all keep your data safe. So, that's our main goal here. We were talking about dictionary words. Okay, now we're on to the last little tip. Make sure it doesn't rely on obvious substitution. And the example we use is house with a capital H and a 0. And that's it, right? Those are obvious. And that one, I have a tendency to do that.
Old habits.
Right? Old habits. Because we started doing that, I don't know, decade or so ago, right?
Moons ago, yes.
Yeah.
When we first needed passwords.
Yeah.
I had a job where I had to change my password every 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
And my password was January 1995, February 1995. So all I had to do is look at the calendar. It wasn't very secure, but I remembered it easily.
Right? I know. I used to do that too. I would just add a different number at the end.
Yeah. But now we've seen where it will not allow you to change a password if you've used it in your recent history or if it's too close to the previous one. So good. That's a good thing that's a good security measure.
Well, I think we're touching on the larger point here is passwords have gotten more complicated. That's because the risk and the bad guys have gotten more complicated.
Yes.
You want to leave your house doors unlocked, somebody's going to come in. But if you want to put a security system in place, you're going to help protect your house.
Yep.
Well, where I live, I can see them a mile away, but.
and even it's like you lock your front door and keep the honest people out, like my dad used to say.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. We don't want company today.
No.
Oh. Okay, so lastly, we want to talk about how to actually create a secure password, right?
Yep.
And we talked about using an easy sentence to remember and then turning the sentence into a password. The example that we talked about before we came live, do you want to share that or do you want me to?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay. So the phrase was, the first house I ever lived in was 613 Fake Street. Rent was $400 per month. So the password was capital T, for the first sentence. The first house I ever lived in was.
Yep.
Yeah. So it was TFHLELIW, and then 613 was the number. Fake Street. So they put an F and an S dot RW $4 PM. That's the way they came up with their little phrase. So It's a pretty secure password. It makes no sense. I mean, if you look at it, you're like, what the heck is that? It looks like one of those randomly
generated. Yep.
Generated. Thank you for the word. Yep. It wasn't coming out. Generated password. So, any other tips before we end today's live?
Well, again, we could talk for hours on this. If you have an option of not using your email address in a, username, password are called credentials.
Mm-hmm. So
if you have the option of not using your email address, do so, because email addresses are easy to find, especially if you're, your work like ours are out on our website somewhere, I'm sure. Don't use your username or your email address. Make a strong password, and we talked about this before. Don't repeat it on other websites, because you never know. That group you joined when you were in, something 4 years ago, and you got out of that group 3 years ago, and they got attacked 2 years ago, and your username and password were stored. Now that username and password's out on the dark web, which you guys, I believe, are going to talk about tomorrow or next week, right? Maybe.
We mention it a lot, but we actually, go ahead.
So someone's going to buy your username and password on the dark web, and you live in Escanaba. I'm going to look at every bank, every credit union, every store, and I'm going to use that username and password to try and get into every one of those accounts, just on the chance that you have an account there. And so by using a different password for every account, you've really lowered your risk of exposure there.
Yeah. Well, can you imagine if that one password was on 100 sites? I mean, that's 100 places you have to get before the hacker gets. I mean, if you know that your password has been compromised.
And what are the first thing they're going to do? If I hack Aaron's account, what's the first thing you do? Change the password.
Yeah, absolutely.
You change the password and Aaron's locked out.
Yeah.
So set up your recovery emails accounts and use disparate passwords and a password manager.
Yeah, which we'll talk about next week.
Right.
We do, and you mentioned the dark web. We do scans for our customers. That's not a free service, but we do scans of the dark web, and we provide lists of emails that have been compromised to our customers.
Right.
So
by domain, it's
by domain.
And I've seen those reports.
I have to.
And they're kind of frightening when there's different ways they get these email and usernames and passwords, I should say. Like I said, from attacking, say you were a member of, and I'm just remembering one I saw, they were a member of Weight Watchers for years ago. Mm-hmm. And then someone else had an account with Adobe, right? Acrobat Reader, PDF company. And it was like 3 years old. So, if you change your password and don't use that password anymore, it's not a problem. But if you see a password that's for sale on the internet that's 3 days old from the president of your company, and it was generated from a keylogger, which is a piece of bad software on your computer that tracks every keystroke you make.
That's scary.
How hard is it to say, here's D. Basilovitz at dstech.net, and the next 12 characters typed or whatever, pretty good chance that's his password. That's something you got a big problem.
Yeah.
So,
go ahead,
John. No, go ahead.
When I looked at that dark web report for DS Tech, the one that jumped out at me was an employee that had worked here for a long time, had retired, they got hit on the dark web, and the password that came up, and I kid you not, is a password I still use today on certain systems. You know, so to see that ex-employee for who knows what it was, but it was the same password I've been handed to use today. Kind of scary.
Yeah.
I think I saw that, and I think I was using that password in several places too. So you know, we're all guilty of it, using that same password in different places. So not anymore though. So anyway, good stuff. You can get what you can get for free is, you know, we have some free PDFs on our website that you can download, and we have our free security assessment for your business if you want us to go over your network and see where the holes are. So, and sign up for our newsletter so you get these tips right in your inbox every week. And come see us live, of course, every week. Live at 11 on Thursdays. All right. Make it a great day, guys. Thank you very much.
2 weeks.
Yeah, take care.
Yes, Dave will be here in 2
Alrighty.
weeks. Aaron and I should be here next week. We're going to talk password management. Yes, thank you. All right.
You'll come up with something.
Yeah.